Good day. My name is Helmich van Rees and I'm a trainer of Eris Training Center International in Barneveld, the Netherlands. And I'd like to explain a little about air quality. A little because there is actually much to say about it, but I want to keep it brief this time. A Canadian person called Higginson, more than 150 years ago, he said that if I have to mention the most perfect thing in the universe, I would say it's an egg. And actually, I very much agree with him. The technology, if you can call it technology, the technology in an egg is really amazing. They are wonderful items, which if you study them, you would be really surprised, really amazed. But let me not get ahead of myself. Let me start with the presentation on eggs. And then first we have to talk about quality. And then first we have to define what is quality really. And quality is actually the extent to which a product meets the wishes or the demands that are set by the buyers. That also means that the wishes or the demands by the buyers in Bangladesh may be different from those in New Zealand or in Uganda or in Tanzania or in Argentina or wherever. It also means that the wishes or demands 100 years ago will have been different from the demands and the wishes right now. So that means that quality is not something which is fixed, but it's sort of flexible. It depends on location. It really depends on the wishes and demands that are set by the buyers. There are some quality aspects we can discuss, and some quality aspects are, for instance, let me see a good shape. Usually we want a good shape. They should be clean. We want a smooth shell. We want the shell to be equally colored. They should be strong. There should be no cracks, no holes. Usually people want it to be fresh. They should be brown or they should be white. A small air cell is something usually liked. We want a good size. We don't want a strange smell. We want it to be free from abnormal content. We also don't want a strange taste. There should not be residues of medication. There should not be pathogens. It should have an accepted husbandry system. It should have a good trademark and whatever. Yeah, there can be a lot of things associated with quality. Do realize, of course, that these are many quality aspects, but you also will have to be able to check all that. For instance, it should be if you claim the eggs are free from residues of medication, that also implies that you will need a laboratory to test a sample of eggs to show to the consumers that they are really free from residues of medication. And that may not be as easy always in every situation. Why is egg quality important? Well, basically for two reasons. Obviously, it is important for marketing because we're talking about the clients, we're talking about the wishes and the demands of the clients, of the consumers, but it's also important for your management because quite a few problems in egg quality have a relation with the management also. And they could act as an early warning, like what is happening in the flock. They could be an indication as to how well your management is, as far as housing, medication, diseases. There are a lot of things related to egg quality, and therefore it's also important actually. But let's first look at how an egg is really formed. And then I have here a picture of the oviduct, and the whole system, what you see here, is about 75 centimeters, so which is completely curled up inside the body of a chicken. And then it starts here with the ovary, and the ovary has different egg cells, eggs you might say, in various stages of development. It takes about 10-11 days for one pinpoint egg cell to grow out to become a complete ova, and the ova is actually the yolk then. So then we have the ovulation, and once there is ovulation, the released ova, the released yolk, will be received in the infundibulum. And there also the fertilization takes place, that is, if there is of course semen in the oviduct. And that will happen within 15 to 30 minutes. After the yolk has been fertilized or not, then it continues and then it goes into the magnum. And in the magnum, we have the production and the disposition of albumin. That takes about 2 to 3 hours. After that, it's going to the isthmus, and in the isthmus, 2 shell membranes are formed. The egg membrane and the shell membrane. And if you're eating boiled eggs, you probably recognize both membranes already. So in total, we are talking now here of a period of 4 to 6 hours. And after 4 to 6 hours, we have an egg, and we have egg membranes also. But we also need a shell, and for the shell, that takes a long time. Then this egg is moving to the uterus, and the production of the eggshell, that might take as much as 18 to 20 hours. So in total, usually we talk about 24, 25 hours it takes an egg to form. And then finally, it's coming out through the vent, through the cloaca. But at the same time, there is also the colon. So there is a clever device making sure that when the egg is laid, it does not get in contact with the manure which is present in the colon. Here a small video on how the eggs are formed. Right. So here we have a cross-section of the egg, and this is a nice picture, but there are 2 details I don't like. First of all, I don't like it that the tip is up and the blunt side is down. If you store an egg, you should always make sure that the tip is down and the blunt side is up. That's one thing I don't like about this drawing. Another one, what I don't like, is that number 9, that is the place where the embryo will develop. It is shown as a red spot, but actually it's not red, it is white. But anyhow, that is my critique on this drawing. For the rest, it is a complete drawing, a complete image of what an egg is like. So number 1 represents the shell, and then number 2 we have the shell membrane, and number 3 we have the egg membrane. And these are the 2 membranes which are formed in the oviduct. Then number 4 is the chalaza, and there are 2 chalaza. Number 4 is chalaza, number 13 is also a chalaza. And then number 5 is the thin albumen, the light blue part here, that is the thin albumen. But we also have the thick albumen, which is number 6. And if you have a fresh egg and you fry an egg, you'll notice that if you put it into the pan, then some part of the albumen will stick very close to the yolk, and another part is thin, which is flowing around it. And you also know that the fresher the egg, the more of this thick albumen is here. Then number 7 is the yolk membrane, and number 8 is then the complete yolk, of course. And in the complete yolk, and then in number 9, that is the red area, which is actually white, that is the germinal disc. That is where the embryo will develop, if the embryo, that is, if the egg was fertilized, of course. Then on 10 we have dark yolk and we have light yolk. And this seems very obvious from this drawing, but actually this is very difficult to see. And the reason why these are dark and light is that the yolk is developing over a period of about 10 to 11 days. And so during that period, more and more nutrients are placed into this yolk, into this ova, in fact. And the yolk and the nutrients which are placed during the night, they have a different color as to the nutrients which are placed during the day. So that's why you see these rings actually, but hardly relevant for us and hardly visible also. Then surrounding the yolk, there is also a layer of thin albumen. And then 13 is the chalaza again, as I explained. And number 14 is in the egg cell, the air cell. And you see the air cell takes space between the shell membrane and the egg membrane. And then finally we have the cuticle, which is a waxy layer on top of the egg, which gives it this very special shine actually. Now, this is something about the strength of the egg shell. There are quite some data available for that. Very important for people who are going to transport the eggs, of course. But the exact details are mainly important for the breeders, for the people who are producing these hybrids, because for the farmer itself, it will hardly be relevant because equipment to assess these details is quite expensive actually. Then we have pores in the shell, and usually there are some pores, some 8,000 pores opening in the shell, which can be depending a lot from 2,000 to 17,000. Most of them are on the blunt side. That's also the part where the air cell is developing, and they don't all reach the surface. So if you are cleaning the eggs by sanding them, you're increasing the number of pores. And that means you get increased evaporation, and that means that the egg will dry out more quickly actually, and that the air cell will become much bigger, too fast actually. So these are the pores. This is meant for the embryo to use to have gas exchange, oxygen coming in and carbon dioxide and water getting out actually. The cuticle is, like I said, is a very thin membrane of protein and sugar. It's a bit moist. It has a special shine on it, and it's one more protection against bacteria and fungi. And it prevents over dehydration. And as the birds get older, it gets thinner. In general, and this is one of the indications, if the bird gets older, then a lot of quality aspects of the egg are getting worse. So that's something to realize. Protection against bacteria and fungi is very important because basically an egg contains all nutrients to form a new life. So it must be very attractive for bacteria and fungi. So therefore an egg is excellent in wearing off all kinds of bacteria, fungi and other pathogens. Now, the color of the shell is also a quality aspect for many people. Many people claim even that a white egg tastes better or worse than a brown egg, but basically the taste of an egg is mainly depending on the feeding of the bird. But there are many kinds of egg colors. People only usually, they are familiar with white and brown eggs, but there are also green eggs or little bluish egg. And you can distinguish the color. If the birds, like these black birds, they have a very white earlobe, that is an indication that also the eggs they produce will probably be white. Here are the shell membranes, and this is a boiled egg. You can take them out, and the membranes are firmly linked, except on the blunt side, and that's one of the reasons why the air cell will be formed on the blunt side. Gas can exchange, and they form a barrier, but bacteria and fungi have more difficult to pass these barriers. Unless the egg gets old, then that quality is a bit more damaged. And also older eggs, the older hens, they don't produce that quality eggs, of course. Now we have the air cell, and that is formed just after laying. Let me move my picture a bit. So the moment the egg is laid, there is no air cell. But due to cooling down, in fact, the content is shrinking, and then that's when the air cell appears. Mainly at the blunt side, like I explained, it should be about 3 millimeters deep in a fresh egg, and the older the egg gets, the larger the air cell also gets. So a common knowledge is that if you have an old egg, it will float in water, and a fresh egg will sink in water, and that is basically because an old egg has a very large air cell, and therefore it will float in water. The albumen is transparent. It is slightly yellow, and if it is very, very fresh, then it is not so transparent, but after a few days it is nearly completely transparent. Like I showed in the picture, there are 4 layers. There is a very thin layer, jelly-like albumen around the yolk, and there is a thicker layer of thin liquid albumen, and then there is thick albumen, and another layers of thin albumen is available also. So there are basically, you have to realize that there is thick and thin albumen. Now, the amount of thick albumen determines also quality, because it is more in fresh eggs and more in young hens also. So if you fry an egg and your egg floats completely over the floor of the pan, then you know that it's an old egg, or it is an egg from an old chicken. And if everything stays close together, then you know that you have an egg from a young hen, and you have also a very fresh egg. So after time, thick albumen is changing into thin albumen. And then the amount of thick albumen, that is expressed in Hoff units. I'll explain that in a moment. Now, the calathea, they are like elastic bands made of ovomucine, and they're linked to both sides of the yolk, and they are meant to keep the yolk away from the eggshell. If they are attached to the eggshell, then the yolk might be easier contaminated with bacteria and fungi, and it should be protected with the thick albumen. So therefore it's important that the yolk stays in the center of the egg, and these elastic bands, so to speak, they help to keep the egg there. Now, some quality aspects are often the yolk color. In general, people like a yellow yolk, and a yellow yolk, you can also have a completely white yolk, but the yellow yolk is mainly a matter of what do you feed them. You need a pre-carotene in the feed, and then you get a yellow yolk. There is even a yolk color fan. You can even determine which color do I want, and we know that in various countries people have different preferences for yolk color, and by feeding them a certain amount of pre-carotene, we can even determine what color would be most suitable for which market. So yellow maize, alfalfa and grass, they give a darker yolk if you want that. It is a bit breed dependent, and it also depends a bit from individual birds, but generally it is, like I said, it is a feed. The feed determines what the color of the yolk will be. There may be diseases associated to that, or a lack of vitamin A, or too much vitamin A also, but like I said, it's mainly, in general, it's a matter of feeding the chicken. This is, for instance, an extreme example. This picture was sent to me by an alumnus from Ghana, and he was feeding the birds sorghum as an energy source. And in sorghum, there is no protein, there is no pre-carotene whatsoever. So there was no way that the yolk could become yellow, so they remain white. There's nothing wrong with these eggs. The taste is the same. The nutrient quality is also about the same, but people don't like it. People like yellow color, so that is an important quality aspect then. Now, in Hoff units, like I said, that is a matter of determining how much thick albumen there is, and it is used as a unity of freshness. And Raymond Hoff in 1937, he based a formula based on the height of the thick albumen. And here you see a device with which we measure how much thick albumen is there above the glass plate, and that in combination with the weight of the egg, before it was broken, of course. And then you have a formula, and then you get a number. And I have here a table with a small section of those Hoff units, and then you see that this is the height of the height of the albumen. The higher the number here, so the more millimeters of Hoff units, the higher the number, the higher the Hoff unit is also. And you have to read that in relation to the weight of the egg. Yeah, so if the egg gets heavier, then it's more difficult, much more difficult to get a high Hoff unit. And this is relevant for the trading because we could have a guide for Hoff units, and this one is used in the Netherlands then, that we want, so some eggs are being tested for that, and we want it to be at least 60. If it is below 60, then the consumers are starting to complain about egg quality. So for the trading, because also some days there are between the reception of the eggs and really consumption, for the trading we want eggs of at least 70. And if they are 50, for instance, they're not acceptable anymore. But that might be different from country to country, from consumer to consumer, of course. We do know that the Hoff units reduce by time, but also by temperature. So, for instance, if you have a Hoff unit, high Hoff units of more than 85, and you keep the eggs at a temperature of 1 degree, then it remains, the Hoff units, the freshness remains very high. But as compared to when you have storing eggs at 24 degrees, then the Hoff units deteriorate very fast. So it also means that in Bangladesh, when you have high temperatures, you will have more likely you will have low Hoff units because the temperature is so high at which the eggs are being stored. Now, as long as the consumer don't complain about that, well, there's nothing wrong actually. But if they start complaining, you know that you really should cool down the eggs somehow before they're going to be marketed. There's one blue line, and that is oiled. And that is something which is done in many countries like United States and New Zealand. Their eggs are being washed, and after washing, you are damaging the cuticle, and that means there is much more dehydration. And to prevent dehydration, they spray oil on the egg. And if you spray oil on the egg, you are sealing the pores. That means there is no more evaporation, there's no more gas exchange. And then an advantage of that system is that you are able to maintain a high Hoff unit. Now, in general, we see that this is unfortunately a picture in Dutch, but we see that once the birds get older, the percentage of second-class eggs is increasing. In other words, we have more problems with egg quality. And we also see that the average Hoff unit on the day of egg production is reducing. So in general, younger chickens produce eggs of better quality and of higher Hoff units. Now, what you might also have in eggs, there are some blood spots and meat pieces maybe. And then blood spots might be because of tearing of the yolk membrane. I have here, this is the ova, the ovarium of a chicken. And you see all these ovas in various stages of development. And this is the biggest one. And you see that around the big ova, there is a net of blood veins which are meant to nourish the yolk. And then at the ovulation, the yolk membrane, the surrounding net, you might say, should break exactly in the middle where there are no blood veins. If that happens, then there will not be any contact between the yolk itself and the blood veins. But if this does not tear like this, but if it tears and touching the blood veins, then there might be some blood in the eggs. Now, you can also have blood spots or meat pieces. So these are blood spots, but these are meat pieces. And then the meat pieces, they come from the oviduct, or they're just a piece of tissue. And funny enough, they are related to the feather color. That is to say that if they are white hens, then also the meat spots are very white. They are hardly detectable, but if you have a brown layer, then for some reason those meat spots are often brown also. To come back to the blood, sometimes there is a lot of blood, and if there's a lot of blood, it might be that the magnum is bleeding. Now, this might happen also because of lack of vitamin K, or too much sulfur medication, or as a result of frightened hens. You might have that. So if you find a lot of meat spots in your birds, if you find a lot of, or in your eggs, or a lot of blood spots, you should investigate what is really the reason for that. Egg washing is not allowed in Europe for consumption egg, but in United States, Canada, and Japan, you have to. If you want to wash eggs, you have to be careful, and you always have to take a temperature of the water which is higher than the temperature of the eggs. If you have water which is colder than the temperature of the eggs, then the eggs will cool down even more, and they will suck in items from outside the egg. Whereas if the water temperature is higher, they may try to push out all kind of dirt which has been in the egg itself. And you also always have to use fresh water. Now, I have here a picture of an egg washer, and maybe that illustrates why in Europe we're not very fond of egg washing. This picture was taken at an egg washer, and what you see here, there's a bucket with water, and then these eggs are dirty, and then they are being washed in this water, and then here they are supposedly clean. I'm pretty convinced that the eggs here, they look clean, but all sides, all parts, the complete surface of this egg has been immersed in this dirty water. So I expect that these eggs, even with some dirt here, might actually be cleaner than the eggs here. Now, there is on the poultry side, you can find a booklet called Optimum Egg Quality, and this Optimum Egg Quality contains quite a few problems with eggs, but also what the source or what the cause of that eggs is. And there is also Alltech has also a beautiful poster with all kinds of problems also. I will show you a few of these in this presentation. The Alltech poster is mentioned here, and there are other sources also. So, for instance, you may have shell defects, and they could be because of housing issues, they could be because of health issues, they could be because of nutrition issues, but also because of management issues. Like if you have cracks or holes in the shell, then what could be the reason? It could be the age of the hen. I told you already, the older the hens, the more problems with egg quality. It could be because of a lack of vitamin D3. It could be because of a lack of calcium. It could be because of infection bronchitis. It could be because of the beak or the nails of the hens, and it could even be housing issues. Maybe the laying nest is not suitable anymore. So there could be a lot of reasons. So it would be very wise to check frequently in your the collected eggs, what are the second class eggs and why are they not perfect? What is the reason? What is the common ground they have, all of them? So sometimes you find thin shells or shell-less eggs, and that might be because the oviduct is immature or because of stress that the egg is laid too early. Because as we said already, the eggs will take 18 to 22 hours before the full calcium is being formed in the shell. But if a chicken is frightened, if she is stressed, she wants to get rid of that egg early, and then she may produce eggs like this. It could also be because of a vitamin D3 problem or a calcium problem, or again because of infection bronchitis or an egg drop syndrome. You can have a rough shell like this egg, then there could be IB or ILT or AE. There could be many diseases. It could be a few diseases responsible for that. There could be problems in the oviduct. There could again be stress, unrest. There could be a change in light schedule. There could be a lack of water. There can be quite a few reasons for that. So studying your non-perfect eggs can help you to assess what is going on in my farm. So some misshapen eggs, sometimes they are too round or they are too long. It could be because of an immature oviduct already. It could be because of a defective shell gland, again infection bronchitis, but also again stress or unrest can also be the cause of misshapen eggs. This is a flat-sided egg. And what happens, what you have in a flat-sided egg is that probably this egg was in the uterus together with another egg. So then you have two eggs in the same uterus. And that means that the chicken was supposed to lay one of the two eggs, but she didn't lay it, she kept it inside the uterus. And why? Well, that could be because of infection bronchitis. It could also be because of stress or change in the light schedule. Then finally, a glazy point eggs, and that is typically for a mycoplasma infection when you get these eggs, which are very brittle at the top and they break very easily. Also associated with infection bronchitis and also infected with related to coryza. So there are more of these problems, more of these defects you can recognize, and like I said, it would be good to check on these defects, find out what is the common ground, and then you can study what is the problem actually. That will help you a lot in your management. Thank you very much.